Welcome to AI for Growth, Lessons from Leaders. I'm your host, Megan Driscoll. AI for Growth is a podcast that demystifies AI for business owners. Each episode features conversations with leaders who share their experiences, covering the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI implementation. We aim to help businesses understand how and where AI can effectively scale your operations, focusing on practical insights rather than just hype. Welcome. Welcome to AI for Growth, Lessons from Leaders. Today, I have with me Justin Roopnarine. I am super excited about this conversation. I'm having someone on who I have never had someone in this industry. So, Justin, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and we'll get started.
Gotcha. Thanks, Megan. So I'm a partner at Limitless Capital. We're essentially a fund that focuses in the global equity space. And as a partner right now, my main responsibilities are, of course, scaling our operations, refining our investment thesis, and of course, facilitating capital introductions. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for coming. I do think that the financial industry is an interesting space to talk about how AI is sort of changing that. So maybe we could just start at like a kind of a micro level, like how are investment companies like your firm utilizing AI and sort of implementing that into your business operations?
Yeah, of course. So, ironically enough, since let's say 2021 was the heyday of all these recent LLMs and whatnot. Before, right? Traditional methods. There's quite a lot of data in the finance industry, as you might imagine. From decade data down to seconds, minutes, even smaller than that. EPS, EBITDA, all these reports everywhere. Long story short, there is quite a bit of information, and it takes time and a lot of money and resources to sort through all of that. AI has allowed us to do, at least with the recent LLM trend and, other similar, tools in that vein. We can organize our information a lot more quickly and gain insights that would have taken a lot longer to discover. So, for example, it is, as we're looking back at company reports or other just data from, 5-10 years ago, it's hard, to just determine, hey, why did this jump up all of a sudden, so to say? Why did this all of a sudden drop? What happened? What was the volatility looking like? Of course, we had programs that we still use to this day that kind of, sort through all that data and find those spikes or troughs or whatnot. But with AI, we can kind of, glean some more insights, more information. All right, we've determined when these spikes were, volatility all of a sudden jumped. But what was the major news event, right? All right, AI, can you help me just search for major news events around that time? And more often than not, it's able to just help us gain or glean more insights from just information that we might have missed before. And it's interesting in that aspect. It's basically a very helpful tool that has the entire knowledge of the internet alongside it that we can kind of pair it along with data.
Yeah. It actually is kind of amazing what it can do for your industry, just in terms of like you just talked about, like the trends and whatnot. Because I do feel like, a common term we use in human resources is past behavior is a predictor of future behavior. So like an interviewing technique is to get people to talk about how they've handled a situation in the past, because that will inform you as to how someone will handle a future situation. And I think that the at least the stock market is very similar to that, right? Like we have these things happen and we don't often learn from them, but then they just sort of repeat themselves over and over again. And so it's how can you, I guess more importantly, understand and predict when something is going to go down or up based on trends from the past. It seems like it should be getting easier and easier to do that with AI. Do you think that's true, that we'll be able to predict those trends more easily, or do you think it's just not there yet?
Well, yeah, possibly. I mean, I hate to give you the I don't know at this time, but let's explore both angles, right? Just first and foremost, of course, we are a firm, past performance is not indicative of future results. Same thing kind of goes with stocks. Hey, we can kind of learn from the past how they moved. If we saw this pattern in the past, maybe it's an indication of what it might do in the future. Albeit that. But long story short, AI is kind of the best when it helps us amplify our judgment, not when it replaces our accountability. We're not going to say, all right, because we saw this pattern in the past at this date, at this time, it's going to do the exact same thing this time around. Is it a good indication or predictor? Yes, to a certain extent, but does it guarantee it will do the exact same thing? No. Will it ever come to a day where, hey, if we see this exact same series of events or maybe similar events happening, that it could give us some sort of judgment about the future? Perhaps. Could we make trades or hedges against that that might, either protect our investors or whatnot, or our positions, or potentially seek to gain from those. Yes, but AI and messy data essentially creates some confusion. So one, make sure the data is clean. Make sure what we're predicting, makes sense. Long story short, does our investment thesis, or does our trade idea, does our hedge make sense? And then from there, sure, let's explore. Assuming, we see the same pattern in the past, let's predict that's going to do the exact same thing now. Fair prediction, right?
Yeah.
All right. Let's do it. Let's put on a trade for that, but also put on another hedge. So, to answer your question, I think I'm going a little bit too far, but it's useful for judging or making decisions from previously occurring patterns. When we see pattern recognition at the end of the day, and when we see a similar pattern happening now in the current or potentially in the future, we can identify that quickly and make a position such that, all right, we've seen this in the past. Maybe you can predict what will happen in the future. But if we're completely wrong, for whatever reason, we're hedged in that aspect. Does that help or make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I wonder, as it relates to this in general, like I wonder if there's going to be like a Claude fund. And this is purely what Claude tells you to do. So this is Claude's prediction based on past performance of the stock market of where you should invest. Is like that possible? Is that something that like could happen? It would be so interesting to see like
Right.
um Claude against some of the top investment firms and like who wins over 5 years, you know?
No, I completely agree. That would be that would be something. I'm sure they'll probably do that one day too. Just compare all the
I
leading
might do it.
LLM
I'm
models.
going to set up a
Yeah.
Claude fund, put a little
There
bit
we
of
go.
money in it. And honestly, it wouldn't even matter because it would just be like, let's just see what happens. Is it beating the
Yeah.
S&P or not? Like
No,
someone's got to be doing that.
no, I think so too. I've seen a few case studies and videos of some people who've done something similar, I guess, where they had a thesis and they put it into Claude or GPT or any other similar software like that, and it did trade. Um, but to your question, right? In 5, 10 years, could we see something like that? I would argue that we kind of already had those even before the LLM heyday, right? You could have,
Mm,
you know, I just you could talk with software, see other things where it's like, all right, we usually like to say, all right, when we're coming into a new LP or just general advice, what returns are you seeking? Do you want to double your money? Do you want like 5% return over 5 years? Long story short, three questions: what return are you seeking? What's your time horizon, and how much risk are you willing to take?
yeah.
Like those are the common things from way back in the day.
Yeah.
Could you ask Claude those simple three questions or GPT and it might give you an answer? Say, I don't know, I'm seeking 10% return year over year for 5 years. I'm retiring in like 2 years, so I have to have a really low risk tolerance. Right now, I mean, I'm not a necessarily a betting man, but I'd argue that all the LMs might be able to give you a pretty good idea of what you should and shouldn't do. Like,
Yeah.
but I think where your question was going was like, hey, could it actually down to the day predict when things are going up, down, give you a good risk profile from there? I would say I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I would err on the caution of like, I don't think it can yet, but to our earlier point, it can help you make some judgments. It's
Yeah.
like, all right, if you see similar patterns, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe you've seen this in the past. I've seen this 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Maybe other stocks like, not financial advice, but you see Coca-Cola moving one way and Pepsi moving the opposite. Is there some insights or
Right,
information there
right,
you
right,
think we're
right.
missing?
Yeah, interesting.
So,
How do you see it affecting your hiring? Like one of the things I
hmm,
know, um, just there's I think it's really tough for new grads right now. This job market is crazy, and I think it's going to settle down. But I think that there's a lot of like uncertainty in the market. There's a lot of people like not making hires because of it. But I also think there's a lot of like jobs that are going away. One of the things that I think when I think about the financial space is sort of the data analyst. Like, do you even need data analysts, right? Like you've got this engine behind you that's way better than any individual person in terms of collecting data. Because I do think that in the financial space, well, obviously you've been doing predictive modeling forever, right? So like Claude, like you said, it's not like a life changer because predictive modeling has been sort of the basis by which the financial industry succeeds or fails, I guess. Um, where do you see that affecting like your entry level hires or your younger people? Like, how do you see it affecting like the landscape of employment?
Yeah. So before I answer that, let me just step back. Maybe I have some bias here, but but for context, I graduate school and undergrad, I did electrical engineering and mathematical finance, and I actually was a software engineer and a data analyst for a bit before the LMs and whatnot. Um, and I could maybe speak to my own experience where you know tasks that used to take entire teams, at least leading a team. Hey, you have to develop this feature. We're going to do sprints every day. Can now, I mean, even just be done by myself and maybe one other. And then it got to the point where it's like, yeah, I mean, I could develop the whole feature, test everything. Yeah, it's referring to software engineering, pretty much all by myself. Even without telling GPT, hey, please develop this feature, I can just inherently test it, understand the. Long story short, to your point, yeah, it's definitely affected the hiring market. It's made senior devs and a lot more, I guess, yeah, senior positions a lot more efficient at what they can do.
Mhm.
Such to the point where it's like you don't really need these junior teams. However, or missing is a crucial fact, right? If you only have the senior dev market and there's no entry or junior positions, you're not really training a workforce for the future. I think that's the argument, a lot of or mainstream media has picked up. And it's right. If you're not training a human workforce, assuming there's no AGI anytime soon, we're going to come to this point where, you know, you're going to have a lot of seniors retiring and not going to have the workforce to replace them. Now, as far as hiring, well, with that point, all right, now that you can kind of do a lot more work with a lot less people, given they have the experience and kind of domain knowledge. Um, yeah, you can make the argument you don't need as much people.
Yes.
However, you know, if I were to ask you, kind of stepping back again one more time, if you were to just outline all your jobs, your roles and responsibilities right now, except not as like a job description, but as like a series of tasks. All right, think about it for a moment, like simple tasks you do every day, like, hey, check my emails. I don't know, write an end of day report to more strategic tasks. Like, hey, I need to grow this podcast at 100,000, a million listeners by the next 6 months, right? If you were to kind of just list out all the tasks you do, and then also work at AI completely automate this. Work at AI helps so much to the point where it's like this used to take me 3 hours a day before. Now it takes me 10 minutes. And really just list that. I think, exploring the job market or talent market is going to change more towards that level where it's
Mhm.
like it's no longer just a job. It is a series of tasks. AI is going to effectively automate or make certain tasks much more efficient such that, you're not spending as much time, no one person spending as much time on tasks that they usually did. However, they get a lot more efficient at a wider variety of tasks. For more strategic tasks, it could definitely help out with that. And maybe the entry level positions could be more focused on those more intensive tasks, at least at this point. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. It does make sense. I do get concerned about the workforce of the future. I also think that now more than ever, I used to say C's get degrees, right? C's get degrees. So
Yeah.
I think it's just like irrelevant now. It's if you're getting a degree with a C, like there's less jobs, and if they're going to hire the A student, they're going to hire the 4.0 over the person that's graduated but barely with a 2.9 or whatever, right? I do think that the world has changed for these new grads, for fresh grads, and for people entering into college and deciding to take that on and deciding to go to get advanced degrees. I think advanced degrees are going to become super important as it relates to the hiring process because there's just going to be less jobs, and
Mhm.
therefore the emphasis is going to be on really like top level people. So I think everybody has to kind of like up their game a little bit. That's my personal feeling, which I tried to share with my children, and they were like, "Whatever, mom." You used to say C's get degrees. I was like, well, I have learned a thing or two and I take it back.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I think the workforce of the future, but particularly in the financial industry, I just think this is a really clear use case for more like more AI, less people, right? Because there's just again, you're so dependent on data, and there's no better data, right, than from a GPT. What's your favorite GPT? Like which do you use? Do you use Claude a lot? Like what does your firm use? What do you personally use?
Yeah, for personal use, I mean, even for, we tested out a few in the beginning. Of course, we kind of steered towards the big players, your Claude, your chat GPT. If you're familiar with like Codex and Claude
Mhm.
Code, those have been game changers. You know, you're
Yeah.
much more efficient on tokens. It's, you know, able to access your local machine. Even, you know, web, it's just incredible. But yeah, I would say those two are our main use cases right now. We're trying to develop some of our own stuff internally.
Yeah, you are. Oh, cool. That yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing too, is once you start working with Cloud Code, you can kind of create your own GPT really that is like,
Yeah.
proprietary to your organization. Have you looked into creating like actual AI agents? So actually employees, AI employees that have specific tasks. Have you guys
Oh
done anything
yeah.
like that?
Yeah, man, it's ironic too. We had a whiteboarding session where it's like, all right, here's the traditional structure analyst, VP, you know, quant analyst, etc. And it's like that same discussion we had about tasks. It's like, all right, what is a quant analyst's, you know, day-to-day task? If you're going to do some research, you're going to do this, you're going to put this in programmatic, you know, implement your idea programmatically. What is an analyst? You know, I don't know, equity analysts' responsibilities are research this basket of stocks, and could it be done agentically? Yeah, to a certain extent. um, we would like to have, I mean, not to, you know, completely, yeah, destroy the idea that the entry level market is gone, but it's like, I still like to be hopeful where it's, you know, it could be made a lot more efficient. And either we had a human in the loop, you know, learning alongside with the AI, with the equity analyst agent or the quant analyst agent, and we had a real human doing it as well. I think we're still at that era where it's like, hey, now, you know, the workforce has changed. You know, of course, you're going to be doing less, but you're going to be doing more with the AI, and you both can be learning together to be more efficient later on to help us grow our organization.
Yeah. You're gonna be
But
managing a team of AI agents.
yeah, I still think we're at the point where we need the human. But if we come to a true AGI or, you know, uh, the AI AGI is like as good as us, then I don't know what that looks like, to be honest. I don't think anyone really does.
I
But
know.
for now, I would argue we still need the human, and I would have them becoming more efficient alongside the AI. And that's kind
Yeah.
of the result of our whiteboarding.
Yeah. Well, I hired my daughter as an intern this summer, and
Oh,
she
congrats.
is going to get certified. And she'll be at the end of the summer. She'll be certified in all Claude, Cowork, Code, everything like that. And she's creating two employees for me this summer. That was her summer project. So by the end of the summer, we'll have two employees working for me that she's created. And I think it's a good skill. And I actually said to her, she had a lot of different opportunities and choices. And I said, I think you're going to learn more working for me than anybody else. And I think, with real like practical skills where I think this AI experience is going to be really helpful when you go to graduate next year. She's a junior, going to be a senior. So, I hope to actually employ a few more interns next summer, even in the same way, just to kind of get people, um, some of these young people like really ready for the workforce because I think it's super important. I might even do a course on it. Who knows? But I think it would be important because I do think that there is the human aspect of directing the AI as to what to do, and it can go off the rails and it can make mistakes. So you do need to, just like a manager would, you do need to manage your AI. And so I think that's actually an entry level position that someone could have, where there's four data analyst jobs that are being done, but someone needs to oversee that and it's basic work. So you wouldn't want a senior person wasting their time on that. It does allow for people to have higher level thought. And that's what I like about AI. It takes
Hmm.
these basic routine kind of the things we don't like to do every day. It takes those things off of our plate so we can actually be thinking broader and bigger. And I think that's the kind of exciting part about it. Um, at least on as I see it, whereas the negative is like lack of jobs and we're going to have a glut
Hmm.
basically. We'll see.
No,
How do
completely
you
agree.
think
Yes.
as it relates to investing. So, how do you see that market changing for the average investor? So, like somebody who is investing on the side, like how do you see AI being like helpful to them or dangerous for them to use?
Yes, for the average investor, as far as, I mean, we can start off with we'll go with the bad foot, the bad first, all right? How could it be dangerous, all right? Uh, you know, long story short, AI on messy data or like incoherent thought processes or procedures is going to create more confusion, messy results. So I think you had another guest who mentioned you hit the nail on the head. If you tell it, you know, going back to that, I don't care about risk. I want to make 5x my money. I have a year to do it. I mean, AI is going to give you a result, right? But it's probably not what you should do in reality. But
Right.
AI is not going to know that, right? It's just going to give you your answer. So all that to say, you still have to be informed, right? With AI on the good, more helpful side of things is like, if you were just coming in, maybe fresh grad or I don't know, high school student or whatnot, you can quickly learn about investing. You can learn about, what your student loans are, the interest on them, what, compare rates. If you were to set aside money, all right, what should I do right now? I'm this age. And it might be able to at least steer you towards your resources that might help you make more informed decision, not necessarily decide for you at that rate because you're not a subject matter expert. I mean, we're still learning new things every day. So for the helpful side, it can help you get pretty smart, pretty dangerous relatively quickly. On the more dangerous side, if you're just letting it decide for you
Hmm.
without really the inherent knowledge of what you want to do, how you want to do it, or just the general idea, you're you're not really helping yourself.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, you know what I've been doing is, so I've been ahead of my investment meetings. I have been loading in like, just like documents from like my recent, trades and my recent accounts and things like that. And I just kind of load it in and I say, okay, this is where I'm positioned. And I talk about like what my goals are basically. And then I say like, what should I be asking my investment advisor about? What trends am I missing? Is there a new great thing that I should be looking at? Like I kind of prompt it that way and then it spits me back like, a couple things. And usually it's really actually leads to very good conversations because I have like a quarterly meeting. It usually leads to some pretty good conversations about, yeah, I wouldn't invest in that, or, that might be a good idea. Why don't we think about, getting more into gold at this point or things like that. So that's kind of how I've been using it, but not to have it make any like decisions on its own or to follow it without like human involvement.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, too, quick aside, I mean, I was a former data scientist, and on that note, too, where you're just having to make decisions, yeah, you could make your team of agents, your team of research analysts to kind of research separate little projects, gives you reports, and you have like a lead AI or agentic manager. That is a good setup, right? You're having little data analyst agents give the data scientist or data manager or project manager agent a report, and that could be used for investing too. That could be
Hmm.
used for a wide variety of things. Any project you can kind of break down into roles and tasks. Yeah, I mean, I believe agents can make it more efficient. But at this point, I still think you need the human in there because, inherently the I mean, AI has context, it has memory, and that memory is limited. We humans have we can go back years and years and remember things and glean insights. So I
Yeah.
still think there's a certain nuance there.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Um, I agree. And that's kind of why I just use it to sort of help guide me in asking good questions
Yes.
and that kind of thing. It's also been, I'm an executive chairman of a board on for a company, recruiting company, PE backed. And it's super helpful for that, just with regard to like, I'll dump the P&L in and I'll dump, the board deck or whatever. And basically, I see trends, but help me not miss those trends. Like, what am I missing? Is there something? This is what I think.
Yeah.
What else am I missing? And that's been super, super helpful. Just with regard to like really pulling out the important pieces of a P&L. And sometimes, again, in finance, I find that like the goals of a company, like what we verbalize is we're trying to do, and the P&L oftentimes doesn't reflect that, or we're not
Mm.
asking the right questions to kind of connect. Like, if you're saying we want to do this, well, these are the things we really need to look at in order to do that, right? And sometimes I think there's a disconnect between those two things. I've found that that Claude, and I use Chat and Claude, but I'm moving really more towards Claude for business. But it's been really helpful in helping to connect dots and describe it in a way that someone can understand. You know, I wonder about that for the financial market. Like, do you feel like you use AI to communicate with clients? Like, has that been helpful?
Yeah. So, well, stepping back, I think that's a great example too. Like, to your example with P&L and just reviewing various decks. Uh, in the past, I think when we had a little bit of a different thesis, a certain basket of stocks, or even personally, I can quickly kind of analyze their earnings report. Yeah, from a basket of stocks quarter over quarter, and just see those like 10Ks. I'm like, all right, maybe I missed footnote 65 on the last page of the deck. That all of a sudden threw all these numbers off. Where it's like, hey, we were trying to hit this metric, but we are, after analyzing our basket of stocks, looking at all their 10Ks, all their quarter reports, so we missed a few things, or maybe we get some new insights. So I really like that strategy implemented too. As far as using AI to communicate with clients, we have to be very careful here, such that we're not going to just GPT generate, hey, these are our numbers from our earnings this year or whatnot. There's still, of course, just manual calculations that have to be done. We have to run these actually, through compliance, through legal. You can still see them formulaically in Excel, but using AI, it helps us gain insights. Like to your point, how are we trending? What who's maybe a competitor in this space? Do they have their financials or whatnot listed, or their growth listed? What do they do? So it helps us kind of understand our data and compare a little bit better, and gain new insights. But as far as communication, we wouldn't necessarily defer to it, but it's definitely a helpful tool to help
Yeah.
us understand what we're doing.
Are there, I feel like AI is just, I spoke to, as an example, I had a Boston University professor on, and Boston University, just as a practice, allows each professor to determine whether or not they allow their students to use AI and for what. So it's very class dependent and professor dependent, which I thought was really interesting that they didn't have like a massive policy, which was this is how Boston University is going to approach AI. Um, s- is that the way it is in the like I feel like in some ways, like hearing that, I was kind of like, wow, it's really is like the wild wild west out there. Like anybody can just be using it the way they want to use it, I guess. And so, are there guidelines that you have to follow with regard to AI that are like financial, like the FCC is saying this, or is everything at like a company level determining, like maneuvering your way through like what's acceptable and what's not acceptable?
Let's see. To my knowledge, there's probably some guidance or whatnot put out by the SEC or FINRA. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's more driven at a company level.
Okay.
In my opinion, where it's like, hey, we still have, like, go back to the early point, right? If we have messy data or messy procedures or processes, and we're using AI on those, we're going to get undesired results.
Yeah.
So I think our official guidance here, or yeah, no, it's our official
Or
guidance is
you're going to
kind of
get
use it
false
as a tool.
results, which you can't
Yep,
afford to get false results.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a helpful tool. It can help us understand our data um, better, but there's no overarching. Hey, you will use AI this way. You will use this prompt. You will use this, this, and this.
Yeah.
It's use your best judgment. We have our procedures, policies. If you find a problem, report it. Or if you have a question, let us know, and we'll determine.
Yeah.
It's worse.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's the wild, wild west still. To be
It
honest.
really is. Yeah. I feel like there's just no, there's, it's funny. Every industry, I've talked to a variety of different people, like from someone who owns an electrical business, to a Boston University professor, to you in the financial industry, to a person who just developed their app and is basically AI app and is, running a software company. It's just such a wide variety of people that I speak to. And there really isn't, there's never like, well, this is the guiding principle. you know, it's really like we are adapting and using this in any old way we want to. And that does kind of concern me a little bit, just about like how this is going to lay out over time, when it's just everybody gets to use it the way they want to use it or way they see fit, and it's very subjective. Like what might be risky behavior for your use may not be risky behavior for another firm's use in the same space, but you guys each get to decide how you're going to use it, right? And I do feel like sometimes, and this I think is true no matter what. Like when my company went on the market, so I sold my company to a private equity firm in 2017, and I hired a broker to do that. And when we did that, I gave them my P&L, that was really all I had. And I got back this deck that was going to be used to sell my company. I was like,
Mhm.
wow, I'm awesome. Like we're amazing. Like you really shined us up like a penny, and there was nothing in there that was a lie. Obviously, everything was true. It was all based on real numbers, but it did feel to me like, wow, this was a big step up in like how I'm describing my business. And we really are great. And I feel like AI is doing that for everything. It's making
Mhm.
everything like shiny, and every communication is better. All the board decks are better. The presentations are better. Everything is like a level up. And it feels almost like, is it real?
It's an interesting point you bring up too, because I've noticed it too. Like all the reports now all have the same like structure, wording. You can tell like it's sometimes even before the AI, like they all had a similar flow to them, and
Mhm.
not just in financial instruments like or financial decks or whatnot. Kind of just everything. From your social media posts, they all have a certain kind of rhythm to them.
Yes.
It does, yeah, to your point, does it seem fake or kind of artificial in a way? Yes, but is it optimal? Is the other question. Where it's like, this is what we're watching. This is what we're reading through, and we consider this good. I mean, well, maybe it's artificial, but is it optimal? I mean, maybe that's another discussion for another day.
Yeah. It's an
But it's
interesting
interesting.
concept of
Yeah.
how do you stand out in a marketplace like this in
Hmm.
any industry,
Or do
in
you
a
want to
place.
stand out? Right?
Yeah.
Do you want
Yeah.
to? I don't know.
Yeah. Do you want to? And if you do, um, yeah, how do you do that? How do you do that in a
Mhm.
in a space where every single thing has been leveled up, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe it's the ones that are just like gritty and maybe we go back to something which it's like raw, who knows? It's just it's a really interesting time, that's for sure. Is there
Yeah.
anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think this is a really great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah,
Interesting
you're
time to
welcome.
be alive, definitely.
It for sure is. So where can people find you? Give me the name of your investment firm again, like what the website, something like that. Where can people find you if they want to
Yeah.
learn more about your
So
company?
if you just want to reach out to me personally, of course, it's my LinkedIn, Justin Roopnarine, the fund itself. If you just want to talk, Limitless LP is our website. But yeah, that's probably the best ways to reach out to me. Thank you.
Good, great. And your last name is spelled Roopnarine for those that are not watching and are
Yeah.
listening. Yeah. It was so good to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, Justin.
No, likewise. Thank you. Have a good one.